I acted like a poor and naive mother when I met my daughter-in-law's family. It turned out that I am Louise, 58 years old, and I have a secret I have kept from my son for nearly 3 decades. As a financial advisor, earning $40,000 monthly, I chose to live modestly in our small suburban home. Michael, my 32-year-old son, grew up believing we were just getting by. When he announced his engagement to Sophia, daughter of the wealthy Blackwood real estate empire, I felt a knot in my stomach. The dinner invitation to their mansion presented a perfect opportunity. I decided to test how they would treat someone they perceived as poor and naive. What I discovered that night changed everything I thought about wealth, family, and what truly matters. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner drop, a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories about family dynamics and unexpected life lessons. Life wasn't always comfortable for me. I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, raised by my single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. We lived in a tiny apartment where I shared a bedroom with my younger sister until I left for college on a partial scholarship. Those early years taught me the value of every dollar earned. When I married James, right after college, we were young and in love with big dreams but empty pockets. Michael was born 2 years later, bringing immeasurable joy into our lives. But when he turned 3, James decided family life wasn't what he wanted. He left us with nothing but a note on the kitchen table and $37 in our joint account. Suddenly, I was a single mother with a toddler, a mountain of bills, and a part-time job that barely covered rent. Those first few months, I often went to bed hungry to make sure Michael had enough to eat. I can still remember counting pennies at the grocery store, putting items back on shelves when my mental calculations exceeded what I could afford. That experience sparked something in me. I refused to let circumstances define our future. While Michael slept, I studied financial planning books from the library. During his preschool hours, I networked relentlessly. My breakthrough came when I helped an elderly neighbor reorganize her investments, increasing her returns significantly. She referred me to her friends, and soon I had enough clients to start my own financial advisory business. Over the next decade, my client list grew steadily. My approach was different from other advisors. I focused on long-term security rather than flashy, risky investments. By the time Michael started middle school, my monthly income had surpassed $10,000. When he entered high school, it had quadrupled. Yet throughout this transformation in our finances, I maintained our modest lifestyle. We lived in the same 3-bedroom ranch house I purchased during my early career. I drove practical cars until they couldn't run anymore. Michael never attended private school or had the latest gaming systems like his friends. Some might call my decision to hide our financial reality from Michael strange, or even deceitful. Perhaps it was. But, having experienced both poverty and wealth, I understood something fundamental. Character isn't built through abundance, but through appreciation of what you have and working for what you want. I watched with pride as Michael developed into a thoughtful, hard-working young man who never expected things to be handed to him. He worked summer jobs to buy his first car. He applied for scholarships and took out modest student loans for college, which I secretly paid off after his graduation. He chose to become a high school history teacher, not because it paid well, but because he felt called to make a difference. There were moments when the guilt of my deception weighed heavily. When he worried about student loan payments, when he searched for affordable apartments, when he declined vacations with friends due to budget constraints. I could have easily relieved his stress with the truth, but each time he overcame a financial challenge on his own, I witnessed his confidence and resilience grow. As Michael entered his 30s, my justifications for maintaining this charade began to feel increasingly hollow. He was a grown man, and I was still treating him like someone who needed this elaborate life lesson. Yet, each time I considered telling him the truth, I found myself wondering if it would change how he saw himself, me, or the world we'd navigated together. Michael met Sophia at a fundraising event for the school where he teaches. He called me the next day, excitement bubbling in his voice as he described the beautiful, intelligent woman who shared his passion for education despite their different backgrounds. "She's an art curator, Mom," he told me. "She knows so much about everything." When I told her I teach history, she asked such thoughtful questions about how I engage students with primary sources, not the usual polite conversation you expect at these events. Over the following months, I heard more about Sophia through our weekly phone calls. She came from a family that had been in real estate development for generations. The Blackwoods were well known in our city for transforming abandoned industrial areas into luxury residential communities. Their name appeared regularly in the society pages and on buildings throughout downtown. "Her parents have this amazing mansion on Lakeside Drive," Michael mentioned casually one evening. "They have an actual ballroom, Mom." "A ballroom?" Sophia says they only use it twice a year for charity events. I remained supportive but cautious. The wealth gap between Michael and Sophia concerned me. Not because I valued status. I knew firsthand that wealth didn't equal worth. But because I feared how Sophia's family might perceive my son. "They sound quite different from us," I remarked carefully. "Are you comfortable in their world?" "Sophia makes it easy," he assured me. "She's nothing like what you'd expect. She drives an old Volvo and wears second-hand clothes to work because she says art should get the budget, not her wardrobe. Her parents are a bit more traditional, but they've been nice enough." 4 months into their relationship, Michael called with news that sent my heart racing. "I asked her to marry me, Mom," he announced, his voice a mixture of disbelief and joy. "And she said yes." After proper congratulations and questions about the proposal, Michael hesitantly broached the subject of family introductions. "Sophia's parents want to meet you," he said. "They're hosting a dinner this Friday at their home. I know it's short notice, but they're eager to know the woman who raised me." I agreed readily, but then Michael added something that caught me off guard. "I told them a bit about you," he continued. "They seemed surprised you're just a bank teller. Mrs. Blackwood asked if you'd be comfortable in their home. Can you believe that? The comment stung like a physical slap. For years, I had maintained the fiction that I worked as a bank teller, explaining my ability to afford our modest lifestyle and Michael's education through careful budgeting and a small inheritance from my mother. What did you say to that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I told them you're the most adaptable person I know, Michael replied, oblivious to my discomfort. But Mom, maybe wear your blue dress, the one from Aunt Linda's wedding. It looks really nice. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. A plan began forming in my mind. If the Blackwoods expected a simple, naive bank teller, perhaps that's exactly who should arrive at their doorstep. Not just any bank teller, but one who was financially struggling and completely out of her element among the wealthy elite. I wanted to see their true colors. Would they treat someone they perceived as beneath their social standing with dignity, or would their behavior reveal the kind of family my son was marrying into? It was manipulative, perhaps even childish, but something protective and primal had awakened in me. Before accepting these people into our lives, I needed to know who they really were. The days before the dinner passed in a blur of preparation. Instead of my usual tailored business attire, I rummaged through the back of my closet for items I'd kept for sentimental reasons rather than style. I found a blouse with an outdated floral pattern I'd worn to a staff picnic years ago. Paired with a slightly ill-fitting skirt and scuffed pumps, I created the image of someone trying their best with limited resources. I practiced expressions of wide-eyed wonder and collected questions that would portray me as financially naive. I've never understood how people afford vacation homes, I rehearsed in my mirror. Do you pay 2 mortgages? The morning before the dinner, I almost called it off. What was I trying to prove? Was it fair to test people I hadn't even met? Was I projecting my own insecurities onto the Blackwoods? More troublingly, was I betraying my son's trust by creating this charade? I was still wrestling with these questions when a memory surfaced. Michael, at 11 years old, coming home with tears streaming down his face because classmates had mocked his worn sneakers. We could have afforded new ones easily, but I'd been teaching him to wear things until they were truly used up. People who judge others by what they wear aren't worth impressing, I'd told him then. Now, 21 years later, I was about to see if the family he was joining lived by similar values. By 6 o'clock Friday evening, I was driving toward Lakeside Drive, my stomach tight with nervousness. The Blackwood estate was even more imposing than I had imagined. Wrought iron gates opened to a circular driveway centered around a marble fountain. The mansion itself was a 3-story Georgian-style home with perfectly symmetrical windows and impeccable landscaping. Michael was waiting outside, handsome in a suit I recognized as new. His eager wave and bright smile momentarily intensified my guilt. He had no idea what I was about to do. "You look great, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. The slight hesitation before great told me my outfit had achieved its desired effect. "I'm nervous," I admitted truthfully, gripping his arm as we walked toward the grand entrance. This wasn't entirely acting, regardless of my financial status. The thought of meeting the family who would influence my son's future was genuinely intimidating. Just be yourself, Michael encouraged, squeezing my hand. If only he knew how far from myself I planned to be. The massive front door opened before we could knock, revealing a uniformed staff member who welcomed us with a practiced smile. The entrance hall featured a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than what a real bank teller would make in a year. I widened my eyes appropriately and gasped slightly. Michael, there you are, a tall, elegantly dressed woman with silver-streaked dark hair descended the curved staircase. Patricia Blackwood moved with the confident grace of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Her smile remained fixed as her gaze slid over me, taking in my outdated outfit with a barely concealed wince. "And you must be Louise," she said, extending manicured fingers for a brief handshake. "Welcome to our home." Gregory Blackwood appeared from what looked like a study tumbler of amber liquid in hand. Tall like his wife, with a distinguished salt and pepper beard, and the confident posture of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. "So you're the mother who raised our future son-in-law?" He boomed, his handshake firm to the point of discomfort. "Michael tells us you've been a bank teller for 30 years now." 25, I corrected, with a practiced timidity. "I started when Michael was little, after his father left us." Patricia's expression flickered with something between sympathy and discomfort. "How challenging that must have been for you, managing on a single income." "We got by," I said, injecting my voice with forced cheerfulness. "The bank has good benefits." Sophia appeared then, rescuing me from further scrutiny. She was truly as lovely as Michael had described, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile that lit up when she saw my son. She embraced me without hesitation. "I'm so happy to finally meet you," she said sincerely. "Michael talks about you constantly." Her authenticity momentarily made me reconsider my plan. Then Gregory spoke again. "Shall we move to the dining room? Our chef has prepared something special tonight." I followed the group through the mansion, making appropriately awed comments about the artwork and architecture. "This house is like a museum," I remarked, touching a side table that looked antique. "Is everything in here expensive?" Patricia exchanged a glance with Gregory. "Many pieces have been in the family for generations," she explained as one might to a child. The dining room contained a table that could seat 20, though only our 4 places were set, with what appeared to be hand-painted china and crystal stemware. As we took our seats, I deliberately reached for the wrong fork, only to have Patricia gently correct me. "We start from the outside in, dear," she advised, her tone patronizing. "Don't worry, formal dining can be confusing for those not accustomed to it." Michael looked embarrassed but said nothing. Sophia squeezed his hand under the table, a gesture I noticed and appreciated. As the first course arrived, I exclaimed with exaggerated amazement at the uniformed staff serving us. "My goodness, you have people who just serve food. That must be wonderful." Gregory chuckled. "Standard for proper entertaining, though I suppose it would seem extravagant to some." The subtle emphasis on some wasn't lost on me. Patricia leaned slightly toward her husband and whispered something that sounded suspiciously like, Some people aren't accustomed to fine dining. Though her words stung, I reminded myself this was exactly what I had come to discover. I continued my performance while observing the dynamics around the table. Michael looked increasingly uncomfortable, while Sophia seemed torn between loyalty to her parents and embarrassment at their behavior. Inside, my resolve strengthened. My charade had a purpose now. It wasn't just about testing the Blackwoods. It was about opening my son's eyes to what he might be marrying into. By the time the main course arrived, Gregory had consumed enough alcohol to loosen his tongue considerably. He launched into a monologue about the Blackwood legacy that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Family heritage matters, he pronounced, cutting his perfectly cooked steak with surgical precision. When you come from a lineage of success, it shapes how you see the world. Wouldn't you agree, Louise? I wouldn't know, I replied honestly. My folks were simple people. My dad worked at the railroad until his back gave out. Precisely my point. Gregory nodded as if I'd proven his theory. Marrying well isn't just about love, it's about combining compatible backgrounds. He looked meaningfully at Michael, who shifted in his seat. Patricia touched her napkin to her lips before asking, Louise, will you be contributing to the wedding expenses? We're planning something appropriate for Sophia's position in the community. I blinked rapidly, feigning distress. I've been saving a little each month, but with my medical bills lately, I trailed off, inventing a financial burden. Medical bills, Michael interrupted, looking concerned. Just some tests, honey, I reassured him quickly. Nothing to worry about. Patricia and Gregory exchanged knowing glances. I could read their thoughts clearly. Not only was I unsophisticated, I was also a financial liability. We're thinking about booking the Grand Pavilion at the Lakeside Club, Patricia continued, turning to Sophia. 600 guests minimum. The governor has already confirmed he'll attend. Michael's fork paused halfway to his mouth. 600, Sophia. We discussed a smaller ceremony. Mother has a certain vision, Sophia explained, her voice tight. I noticed her hand find Michael's under the table again, squeezing reassuringly. The Blackwood annual summer gala typically hosts 800, Gregory stated, as if this settled the matter. Many business connections will expect invitations. That sounds very grand, I offered wide-eyed. Michael and I attended his cousin's wedding last year. They had it in the church basement, and everyone brought a dish to share. It was lovely. The look of horror on Patricia's face was almost comical. A potluck wedding, she murmured faintly. The flowers alone for Sophia's bouquet will cost more than that entire event, Gregory declared with a dismissive wave. As dinner progressed, I noticed Michael growing quieter, the tension in his shoulders visible. When Patricia began discussing the wedding dress budget, a number that exceeded a year's salary for an actual bank teller, I saw something I rarely witnessed in my son's eyes, tears forming. I pretended to be overwhelmed by the figures being discussed. Goodness, that's more than my annual salary, I whispered, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for my water glass. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have our resources, Gregory stated, pouring himself another glass of wine. Clearly, we'll handle all the expenses since Michael's family cannot contribute meaningfully. Dad, Sophia interjected sharply, that's unnecessary. I'm simply being practical, he responded. Some people should know their place in society. No offense intended, Louise. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Michael's face flushed with anger and shame. Sophia looked mortified. Patricia took a sudden interest in rearranging her silverware. In that moment, watching my son struggle not to defend me because he feared jeopardizing his relationship, something snapped inside me. The charade had gone far enough. I placed my napkin carefully beside my plate and straightened my shoulders. 25 years of professional confidence emerged from behind my meek facade. Actually, Gregory, I said, my voice clear and steady, I find your comment not just offensive, but revealing of poor character. The table fell silent. Even the staff serving dessert paused. Mom, Michael began, but I held up my hand. I've listened to enough, I continued. I came here tonight curious about the family my son is marrying into. I wanted to see how you would treat someone you perceived as beneath your social standing. Your behavior has answered that question quite thoroughly. Gregory's face darkened. I don't appreciate your tone or implications. And I don't appreciate your condescension, I replied evenly. So let me clarify something. I'm not actually a bank teller. I own Westbrook Financial Advisors. I removed my phone from my purse, pulled up my company website, and slid it across the table. The page displayed my professional portrait and biography, listing our firm's $10 billion in managed assets. I earn approximately $40,000 monthly, I continued, and have for many years. I chose to raise my son with modest values because character isn't built through extravagance. The silence around the table was absolute. Patricia's mouth had formed a perfect O of shock. Gregory stared at my phone, then at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, embarrassment, and defensive anger. Sophia looked from me to Michael with wide eyes. And Michael, my beloved son, looked completely stunned. His face a complex mixture of confusion, hurt, and something else. Perhaps pride. You've been lying, he finally managed. I've been teaching, I corrected gently. Perhaps misguidedly. Gregory recovered first. If this is true, why the charade tonight? Why present yourself as something you're not? People reveal their true nature when facing those they consider beneath them. I answered simply. Tonight wasn't about testing your wealth, but your character. Patricia's carefully maintained composure cracked. To my surprise, tears welled in her eyes. I never wanted this life, she whispered, shocking everyone. My parents were school teachers. Gregory's father gave mine a job as a favor. We met at the company picnic. Gregory stiffened. Patricia, that's hardly appropriate to share. No, it's exactly appropriate, she countered with sudden strength. I've spent 30 years pretending to be someone I'm not. Watching you tonight was like seeing myself when I first entered this world, desperate to belong, terrified of making mistakes. She turned to me with genuine remorse. I'm deeply sorry, Louise. My behavior was inexcusable. Gregory remained stubbornly silent, but his tight grip on his wine glass betrayed his discomfort. Sophia stood suddenly. I love Michael because he's kind, thoughtful, and never makes anyone feel small to make himself feel big. she declared, fixing her parents with a determined gaze. If you can't see his worth beyond his bank account, real or imagined, then you don't see him at all. I felt a surge of appreciation for this young woman who had just stood up to a lifetime of conditioning. Perhaps she was exactly right for my son, after all. Michael finally found his voice. I think we should go, Mom. The hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. We have a lot to talk about. As we gathered our things to leave, Gregory cleared his throat. I may have spoken hastily, he offered stiffly. Business has taught me to value certain metrics of success. Perhaps I've applied those metrics too broadly. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. I nodded acknowledgement before following Michael and Sophia to the door. The grand house that had intimidated me hours earlier now seemed hollow, somehow filled with expensive things, but missing something essential. As Michael helped me into my car, I wondered if I had won a battle but lost something far more precious: my son's trust. The drive home was silent. Michael had insisted on following me back to my house, despite my assurances that we could talk another day. Once inside, he paced my living room, while I made coffee the familiar ritual, buying me time to gather my thoughts. 32 years, he finally said, accepting the mug I offered. My entire life has been based on a story that wasn't true. The important parts were true, I insisted. My love for you, the values I tried to instill. But why, Mom? Why make me believe we were just getting by when we weren't? Do you know how many nights I lay awake in college, worrying about you being alone and struggling? His words pierced my heart. In protecting him from one kind of harm, I had inadvertently caused another. I wanted you to develop strength and character, I explained. After your father left, I saw how suddenly life could change. I never wanted you to depend on money for your sense of security or worth. So instead, you made me believe a lie. Yes, I acknowledged. And watching you tonight, seeing how Gregory's comments hurt you, I realized I've been unfair. I thought I was teaching you an important lesson, but I was really controlling your narrative. I'm truly sorry, Michael. His anger gradually softened as we talked through the night. I shared stories of my business growth that I'd never told him, decisions I'd made, successes and failures alike. He asked questions about investments I'd made in his name, college funds. I'd established properties I owned. By sunrise, exhaustion had replaced anger. I understand why you did it, he conceded. I don't agree with the method, but I understand the intention. Will you forgive me? I asked, feeling surprisingly vulnerable. His smile, though tired, was genuine. I'm working on it. It might take some time. 3 days later, Sophia called and asked to meet for coffee. I expected recriminations but found an ally instead. Thank you for standing up to my parents, she said earnestly. No one ever does that. I hope I didn't make things more difficult for you and Michael, I replied. Actually, the opposite. My mother called me yesterday. She wants to scale back the wedding plans, make it more about us and less about impressing people. Sophia smiled with genuine relief. And Dad, well, Dad asked if Michael might want to join him for golf this weekend. That's practically an apology in Blackwood language. Most surprising was the voicemail I received from Patricia the following week. I haven't been honest about who I am for so long that I'd forgotten what it feels like, she admitted. Watching you that night reminded me. I'd like to talk sometime, just us. Perhaps I could use some financial advice. And maybe some advice on being authentic too. Even Gregory eventually came around in his own way. At Michael and Sophia's engagement party, he approached me with an investment proposal. Your firm has an impressive track record, he acknowledged gruffly. I respect competence regardless of its source. Coming from him, it was practically a glowing endorsement. The wedding plans evolved into something that honored both families authentically. Michael and I had several heart-to-heart conversations about money and trust. Together, we established an education foundation to help underprivileged students, a way of using our resources that aligned with his values and mine. On the morning of the wedding, as I helped Sophia with her veil, Patricia joined us with uncharacteristic shyness. I wanted to give you both something, she said, opening an old velvet box. Inside was a simple pearl necklace. My mother wore this at her wedding, before the country club memberships and society pages. It reminds me of who I really am. As Michael and Sophia exchanged vows that afternoon, I reflected on my journey from struggling single mother to successful businesswoman and the complicated choices I had made along the way. I thought about authenticity and pretense, about the masks we wear and why we wear them. The richest people aren't those with the most possessions, but those who have nothing to hide. It took pretending to be someone else to make me realize I'd been doing exactly that for years. In trying to teach my son about the hollowness of material wealth, I'd missed a more important lesson about the wealth of transparency and truth. As I watched my son begin his new life with a woman who had shown the courage to break cycles of pretense in her own family, I felt a profound sense of hope. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance we can leave isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to be authentically ourselves. What masks have you worn in your own life? Have you ever pretended to be someone you're not, to test others or protect yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this video with someone who might need permission to be their authentic self today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your true worth has nothing to do with your net worth.